Welcome, everybody. We're just waiting for a few people to join us here on the live feed. We got 2 people in, just letting a few more people come in. Please share this far and wide. So hello, everyone. My name is Neil from Portal to Ascension, coming live and direct from Tricia McCannon's profile page. And we're really excited to talk to you about an event that we're doing, which is next weekend, April 7th and 8th, this weekend actually, on Saturday and Sunday. It's a 2-day event, and it's on lost civilizations and ancient civilizations and true world history and learning from our ancient past. And it's really important for us to be taking the step to create these events. And this is part of the beginning of what we're going to be doing with Tricia McCannon and other pretty well-known speakers and other researchers on this topic, because it is really time for us to uncover and realize our true ancient history so that we can rewrite the history books and have a foundation of who we were and make better decisions for our future. So this one right here is going to be a 2-day retreat in which we're going to have presentations from William Henry and also from Tricia McCannon discussing various aspects of our ancient past. So let's go ahead and bring you on, Tricia. Hi. So we're doing this Lost Civilizations tour. Why don't you tell us about your take on the reason we're doing this tour and the importance of it?
Well, I think it's incredibly pertinent to our time because, some 12,000 years ago, we were actually crossing the galactic equator and we began to descend. And this is when the great civilization of Atlantis, that had reached a very high level of technology, very similar to the one that we have, wound up basically going down. And there was a huge pole shift. And of course, we found woolly mammoths with buttercups in their mouth. And we've discovered now that there's a hidden ancient city that's underneath the ice in Antarctica. And there's evidence as we really begin to have the GPS and the satellites of an enormous worldwide civilization that was very advanced. Definitely a pyramid culture where somehow they had learned to harness the electromagnetic energy of the earth itself, probably to create their equivalent of what we think of as electricity or power at a worldwide level. Now, we don't know exactly how they did that. We are beginning to ask those questions now, but we're at a very similar point because where they were descending as they cross the galactic equator like a big sine wave, we are ascending. We have entered, that's what the 2012 date, the Mayan 2012 date was, for the last 400, 500 years since the Renaissance, we've been slowly moving up to where there was more light coming into our planet. And now it's increasing, and it's going to increase especially for the next 1,000 years as we move through this galactic equator. And so, like the Atlanteans, we have reached a very high, sophisticated level of technology. And much of it is very wonderful and very good. But of course, some of it is out of balance where we're, killing our oceans. We're killing the dolphins and the whales with sonar and Navy experiments where we're using GMOs. And of course, the whole idea was to get more fruits and vegetables and more food so that we could feed more of the world's population, which, as we can tell, is about 7 billion and kind of careening out of control. But along the way, somehow, the GMOs are not producing just bigger food. They're actually making scientific choices that are not healthy for our bodies, like breeding rat DNA with tomatoes, for example. The body doesn't know how to read it or assimilate it. We're using nuclear power, which seems smart on one hand, but on the other hand really isn't, because as soon as we have something like Fukushima, we could make the whole world radioactive. There's so much that we have done that's great. And I mean, I think it's important for us to acknowledge, it's wonderful that we have computers, we have technology, we have laser beams, we have airplanes, we are going to the moon, we're going to Mars. All this is wonderful, but at what cost to our planet, and where are we out of balance? And this is, of course, what happened with Atlantis, that for from 16,000 to 14,000 years, reached a very high civilization of spiritual enlightenment. And then slowly the military started increasing. They made some of the same choices. They got into genetics and hybrid experiments, which of course Edgar Casey talks about. They wound up misusing sexual energy, much as we have done with, pornography. I mean, pornography is now like a crazy rampant thing, and that's a misuse of sexual energy, in my opinion. So we're making some of the same mistakes. So I think that there's a resonance that's very, very pertinent to the now. We're in the middle of major earth changes, earthquakes, volcanoes, the ring of fire, seismic activity, tsunamis, and of course, it's only going to really increase as this planetary shift takes place. So the question with Atlantis, they just went too far, and pretty much they had to, for all the good they had done, they had to be taken out. Now we could either have that happen to us, or we could evolve, and I think that's the direction that everybody wants to see. Instead of destroying ourselves and destroying the planet in the process, we have a different set of choices to make. And this set of choices, in my opinion, is one that moves humanity up an octave and allows us to begin to create a society of unity, and one that essentially is based on the principles that this United States of America was formed on. Now, do we always adhere to it? Absolutely we don't. But we've got, democracy, freedom, the rights of men and women and children and all races and all cultures to be honored for their contributions and to begin to live in harmony with dignity. And these are the things we aspire to. It's the things this country was built on. But, clearly there are people in this country and every country who don't live in accord with those values. And so, I think we're living at a really exciting time. And because the Galactic Council has basically is hoping that we don't have to sort of have destruction and we can have evolution instead, this is one of the reasons why the indigo children, there have been really high consciousness people that are coming onto this planet at this point. The crystal children, the rainbow children, they're different names for them. But basically, they're the next wave of humanity. And we can even look around at some of the things that are happening right now in the school systems with all these wonderful teenagers protesting the gun violence. I mean, bravo. That's exactly what we need. These people cannot be bought. They're unlike the lobbyists in Washington. They're not thinking about lining their own pockets. They're thinking about gun violence around us that's unnecessary. They're standing up for, there's protests all over America right now. There was in Virginia, West Virginia, I think there's in Oklahoma, of teachers who are saying it's not okay to say you have an education department and take away money, which means that the kids will not be educated, and the kids are joining them. So, how wonderful that we have this conscious generation that's coming up, and it's critical because it's the thing that's going to push us into a higher consciousness and a shift without, the twin powers of power, greed, and corruption that have been running so much of the world for so long. So it's very pertinent when we talk about the hidden history of the seeding of the Anunnaki gods, the connection that we have with the star beings and the star kingdoms, previous civilizations, and how we did well and then we really fell down. If we could learn from those lessons, it's absolutely like a mirror. And Edgar Casey talks about how a lot of the souls that are in America in particular, and probably in Canada, are the reincarnations of the Atlanteans. And so we're being given a different chance, another chance to make a different choice and to make a wiser choice this time.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important.
Yeah, and making a wiser choice is exactly what it's all about, because we spoke about this multiple times, but the arrogance that we have that we are the most advanced civilization that ever existed, yet we're talking about hundreds of thousands of years, million years of human evolution and evolution of consciousness, and we're only really referring to what most researchers say is a civilization 13,000 years ago, and that's still a myth. So imagine what could have existed before that we can probably never find out because it's just been wiped out.
It's so true. I mean, the version of history that I was taught growing up was basically, history started about 3000 BC with Egypt. And then, maybe it was a little further back with, Babylon or Chaldea or Assyria. Oh yeah, there was Sumer that goes back a few thousand years behind that. So 6,000 BC. And before that, we were supposed to have been swinging out of the jungles or just prairie savages, eating by the fire, living out of caves with our loincloths. But that doesn't really make sense, because the civilizations that we're talking about all sprung fully formed with architecture, mathematics, language, metallurgy, very sophisticated foundational pieces that they had to have inherited or been taught by an earlier culture. And certainly I think that Atlantis was part of that, but who helped to seed Atlantis?
Exactly.
This has to do with the visitation of the gods, who did have much more advanced cultures. And these are not, gods with a big G. This is not something we need to worship, but these are civilization makers who came here. They had a huge impact on our planet and the acceleration of humans, and they brought many of the foundational pieces of the arts and the sciences here. So there's much we can appreciate about them, but they also brought some of their dysfunctional patterns, which was conflict and war and backbiting and jealousy and competition. They kind of eventually fell into some of those problems down here, and humans wound up sort of emulating them and basically following suit. And we have a lot of the good today, and we have a lot of the bad today, and we're sort of playing out their patterns as genetic expressions of their as their progeny, basically.
So what we're talking about here is we're actually going deep into one of your presentations this weekend, which is Reclaiming Atlantis, Evidence for Advanced Worldwide Pyramid Culture. So just again, if you're just joining us, everyone, this weekend we're going to be in I think
Atlanta.
Shady Springs is near Atlanta, right? Shady Springs.
It's Atlanta, Georgia. It's right. If you know Atlanta, there's a perimeter around it, and Sandy Springs is right at 12 o'clock, and it's right near the big metaphysical bookstores. It's a place called Inner Space, which is one of our 3 really great metaphysical bookstores in the Atlanta area, and so it's a perfect place to have this event.
So we'll have 2 presentations from Tricia. We're going to feature a presentation from William Henry, and this whole entire event, again, if you're just joining us, is about really kickstarting the awareness and finding other ways to get this awareness out on an exponential level, so we can. It's basically like a real history class, with consciousness infused. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it'll be really fun, and I think as you guys know that know my books and my work, I have many books that have 500, 1,000, 1,200 footnotes. But I teach when I teach like this in PowerPoint, so I'm laying out the visual evidence and the history for you to see for yourself, and connecting the dots and putting the pieces together. And I think that William Henry also does the same thing in his way. Both he and I have a real strong connection with ancient Egypt. Both of us have a real strong connection with the divine feminine, also with Jesus, and sort of the hidden esoteric teachings of Jesus, as opposed to like the just traditional, get in line and go to church. We're really looking at the deeper spiritual technologies. And so this is a multi-dimensional weekend where we're going to be showing, literally the discovery of 10 different places that are connected, sunken cities that we found under the ocean, including ones that really are remnants of Atlantis. And we're also going to be looking at some of the 752,000 pyramids that we have now discovered around the world, showing a pyramid culture. We're going to be looking at some of the evidence about Antarctica and the hidden city underneath the ice down there, which is really cool, where they found these giants with the big, kind of cone heads, which are the Anunnaki that came from Nibiru, and also humans. We're going to be looking at the cycles of time and understanding the whole thing about crossing the galactic equator. Where were we? Where are we? What does it mean? And how does it impact our lives today? And what is it that's so crucial for us to know about this? And I love the fact that Portal to Ascension is so passionate about teaching real history, because, I mean, there are actually people who just think that we, swung out of the jungles, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years ago. And certainly that is not what the evidence or the history or the legends tell us.
Right, exactly. So why don't you tell us really quick, because my whole thing has always been that, there's pyramids all over the world, and they have looked like they have similar scientific backing to it, and these civilizations have been told to us by the mainstream to have operated independently from each other. But then we see the connection with the ley lines on the meridians of the planet, with similar hieroglyphs in different areas. So will you be touching on the connection for the worldwide culture?
I will, in fact. I'm actually going to be showing not only where Atlantis was. Atlantis went through many different phases. It actually was a continent in the Atlantic Ocean, and then it broke up into five continent islands, kind of like New Zealand or Australia, big. And then it went down to three, and then by the time we get to Plato's story, there was the one big one with some little ones where the Azores are. They're still up today. And so I'm going to literally be showing pictures of these huge underwater pyramids and cities that they found that go all the way from the Cuba area and the Bimini and the Bahamas over to the east side of the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, it's really fabulous. And I'll be connecting the dots between these ruins so that you're able to really get a good clear picture of what these earlier ages and stages of humanity were about, because we know that Homo sapiens have been around for at least 200,000 years, and some people believe, based on the fossil evidence, that Homo sapiens have been around a lot longer. And so we're going to look at some of that, because Atlantis was only one. We had Lemuria up before Atlantis and coexistent with Atlantis. So we're going to be looking at, like you say, true history and the puzzle. It's a big puzzle. I've got a lot of the pieces. We're going to lay out the pieces and sort of connect the dots. We may not have all the answers, but we've got quite a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah, the cool thing is that if anyone is anything like me, and you have these questions about the inconsistencies in our timeline, the human timeline, really the information is there. It's been hidden in plain sight. And researchers like yourself, Tricia, William Henry, and many others have put all this information together for decades of tireless research and spiritual understanding, I would say, that now we can actually have a clear picture of how it's all interconnected. Because all these questions like why is there a pyramid in India and China, and then there's one over here in the Mayan lands, where did the Mayans originally come from? All that information is there. You go to the local areas, you'll hear stories of it. However, we're in an indoctrinated system over here that we're taught by the people we're taught. It's just been watered down through generations and generations.
Well, there's certain organizations, I think, that have been very genuine in trying to follow the evidence. National Geographic is one of those. Other organizations have sort of had invested interest in a particular version of history, and unfortunately the Smithsonian, I happen to love the Smithsonian Institute, and for years I took their journals and so forth, but I don't take them now, because I came to realize that whenever a lot of these giants were found in the 1800s, the early 1900s, the Smithsonian would come, they would take the evidence and the bones, and then they would, you'd never hear from them again. And so it's very sad that happened. This happened, for example, in 1909 in the Grand Canyon, where a man named Sinclair actually wound up, or Kincaid actually wound up finding a cave and going in and finding a whole underground facility that went down a mile underground that could have slept 60,000 people. And this is, of course, goes along with the Hopi stories of how at the end of the Third World, Atlantis, they had to go in the ground in order to survive, and eventually they came back up. And so there were things that were like round Tibetan granary bins, there were mummies, there were swords that were made of, like the metal that they talk about, that was a combination of copper, silver, and gold in Atlantis. They call it orchalium, I think. There was all sorts of things. There was a gigantic Buddha. A Buddha like the size of a 5-story house. Okay, all this got covered up. The Smithsonian was called. They came in there. After that, they passed the Cave Management Act, which said that you could get a year in prison for going in a cave without the government's permission. So, there has definitely been, and I'm not like a big conspiracy theorist. I try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but I would definitely say that there has been a concerted agenda for the power elite who had a certain version of reality, and they really wanted to stick to that version. And so they covered up, lied about, or ignored the actual evidence and the facts that don't go along with that particular hypothesis. Well, we all know that science, we start with a hypothesis, but the evidence has to fit the hypothesis. And if the evidence continues to show that something else was occurring, like giants here with big cone heads and burial mounds all over the Americas and India and Scotland and Turkey and the Mediterranean, then we have to take another look. And obviously we have to revise our version of history. And I think that one of the reasons that the power elite has been so afraid about the ET situation is, the question we start asking is, well, if there are ETs down here, where did they come from? And then whatever we say, even if we said Sirius, which is 7.6 light years away, how did they get here? What was their energy system? Were they really out there burning fossil fuels? I think not. So then we start getting into, the oil industry, which is a huge lobby, and they want to keep their power as long as they can. And then, have they ever been here before? Yes. Then we start getting into religious stories, okay? Like, well, were they the angels, or were they gods, or who were they? Were those legends, those mythologies, is that real? Yes, in fact, I think they are real. That's what the evidence seems to suggest. And so, then we get into the Vatican's territory, which is, of course, very powerful and big, and not just the Vatican, all the Abrahamic religions that have a particular view of reality, and I think a lot of them have wonderful truths, and there's much good that they've done in the world, but it doesn't really serve for them to continue to, not ask these deeper questions. And it doesn't in any way invalidate, a divine creator, God, the one that creates the extraterrestrials and the other planets, just like it creates us. It doesn't have to invalidate someone's faith, but it just broadens our view and understanding of history and reality.
Exactly. And the reason why this is important now more than ever is that whether it's a controlled agenda, whether it's unconsciously done, whether they just need to protect their petrodollar, whatever the reason is for our history to not be disclosed to us, is now becoming such a huge lie that it's backfiring on them. And it's backfiring in the fact that a lot of this evidence, such as what you're going to showcase, is coming out to the surface, and people can't deny it anymore, right?
Yeah, and let me say, just to give the government some credit, I think that when all this started going down in the late 40s, we had just come out of the shock of Hitler and World War II. And really, spies, and I mean, there had been a lot of horror that had happened in the world. So it's completely understandable that Truman, not wanting to shock America and the world again, set up a kind of a secret group, the MJ-12, of 12 military and 12 scientific people, to try to figure out what the heck it was. It's also understandable, like when Eisenhower came in the early 50s, he actually wanted, when he was briefed on this, to bring it out to the public, but his friend John D. Rockefeller said, well, wait, let's just take a look at the evidence that when a technologically advanced culture interacts with a more primitive culture, in this case, the ETs would be more technologically advanced, that the primitive culture often falls apart because they lose their sense of value and self-worth. And so because of this, he said, listen, let's just go and get the crash ships, try to back engineer the technology, have official denial, but in the meantime, begin our think tanks to see if we can catch up so that when this gets exposed, we feel, like we have some standing and we're prepared. And so, it's been a very long time coming. And I understand that some of the reasons that they did the cover-up were actually intelligent, altruistic reasons. They weren't just a devious, terrible, lying cloak and dagger.
Yeah.
But what happened is, as it went on through the decades, when was it okay to disclose it? Was it okay to disclose it during the Kennedy assassination? No.
Yeah.
Was it okay to disclose it during the Vietnam War, where there were all these people, rioting about that? No. Was it okay to disclose it during the Iraqi wars? Not so much. How about during the depressions? No. So over and over again, I think presidents that have gotten in there who actually wanted to bring it to light, they looked around at the volatile financial and political considerations, and they thought, oh my God, what will this do? I mean, we have our current president tweeting, and the stock market dives 500 points, and when he's saying things that aren't even true. Okay, so that's how scared rabbits and volatile those markets are. So it is completely understandable how we backed ourselves into this corner. And I think that, we should all have some level of forgiveness for the people who were involved in covering it up. But I think it's now time, without, no harm, no blame, no foul, it's now time to begin to really be more honest about it and say, they covered it up for what they believed at the time were the right reasons. And now it's time for us to really investigate what's true. And that's what is so important to me about this, is talking about, our past, our present, our future, and how this knowledge can change the way we live our lives today, so that we make a wiser set of choices. And of course, this is connected with spirituality. We could argue it's connected with the end of days, as they say in the Bible, Revelation. It's connected with the return of the divine feminine, which is why I wrote my book about Return of the Divine Sophia. It's definitely connected with the Christ consciousness that we're trying to bring back into the world. It's connected with all of these things, and it's connected with the ETs, absolutely. Many of which I think are very benevolent and high consciousness and want the best for us, and some of whom I think have private agendas that are not quite as warm and cozy and friendly, and they're much more self-serving, just like human beings. We have self-serving human beings, many of them in government today, unfortunately, trying to line their own pockets or look the other way when ethics are out the window. But we also have wonderful people who are the people probably are listening to this broadcast. We have many, many, many people awakening to wanting to create a better world. And some politicians are ethical. Some politicians actually are trying to do good. So I don't want it to be, whitewash when we say that, but we can certainly observe that many are not on the bigger plane, are they? So anyway, I'm excited about this weekend. I think it'll be really great. And I think William Henry's work is a really beautiful complement to this, too. I think William is a very good researcher. He loves Egypt and has been over there many times. I've been over there many times, too. And I think he's going to present information about the robe of light and the ascension process and Christ consciousness. And so, it's a really, really nice blend of spirituality, mysticism, ancient civilization, and world prophecies. So
exactly, and what it all comes down to, like you said, is that it's basically the evolution of consciousness, the true world history and the history of the human species and how we got into this planet is really tapped into the understanding of us going through these cycles of time. And part of what you're saying about having forgiveness is about the fact that these individuals or these souls signed up to give us this experience of duality, and what it's really leading to is the end of that dualistic experience in this dimension and the experience of something else. How do we get there? Not by judging those who gave us the experience that we signed up for, but having gratitude and connecting to our higher selves, realizing like, whoa, thank you, Illuminati or whoever, right? Thank you for giving me the financial system. Thank you for controlling and enslaving us. Because it's funny to say, but honestly, that is the paradox of it all. And so that's why I like this topic, that what we're doing, because it's the foundation for all things conscious. whether it's sacred sexuality, sound and frequency, ancient civilizations, extraterrestrials. Learning about our history gives you the platform to understand everything.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like, how can we learn, you know, if we don't know our past, how can we learn from it? And if we study the past, we can, if we lived 1,000 years, we would have seen these cycles of tyrants coming up and manipulation, and we'd start recognizing it's like, oh, there's another Mussolini, oh, there's another Hitler. I'm not buying for this program. I know exactly where this goes. We would have figured it out, but because we live these short lives and we're so busy in our current lives, a lot of us don't. We have very sketchy versions of history, you know. Maybe we weren't interested when we were in high school or college, but now that we're older and this true world history is starting to come out, we can begin to see how very valuable it really is. So, and you should mention that this is not just a live event, it's a live stream event. So people anywhere around the world can sign up for this and actually be there with us and get this information. So I think that that's an amazing thing. If you can speak to that just a moment and tell them where to go if they want to sign up.
So I actually put if you're looking at the Facebook live feed right now, I put the link in all of the places I shared this. So it's globalascensiontours.com is just the general links, the first event there, or you can just click the direct link that I have put in the comments. And yes, it will be live streamed. And if you attend the live stream, you get unlimited replay access. So you can watch it back at a different time if you aren't able to attend on the day. And you can go to globalascensiontours.com. It's the first event, 2 days. There will be probably like, you're going to do what, like 2-3 hour presentations, Tricia, and then also take questions?
Yeah, Saturday morning, I'll start off about 10:30, and it'll be a 3-hour presentation. That one's going to be about the Atlantis and all these incredible mind-blowing ruins and the worldwide culture and all of this. And then I think we have a presentation by William in the afternoon, and then William on Sunday morning about the robe of light, and of course he's talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls and all this other cool stuff. And then in the afternoon on Sunday, I'll do 3 hours on the cycles of time, Mayan prophecy, the indigos, the crystals, you know, where we are in all of this. So yes.
Yeah, and I can attest to the fact that both presentations by you and William are really intriguing and really fully encompassing and exciting. So this is really going to be a weekend journey of exploring your ancient past and where you came from and how we're all interconnected. So I really, really hope you can all make it. Please, if you're around Atlanta area, come out to be a part of the event because we're going to create some amazing synergy together, have a lot of fun. And if you aren't able to, please check us out online on the live stream and you can join us there.
I've posted the details on my Facebook page as an event. I'm like, I feel like I'm sometimes a technical bozo, so most of you probably can figure out how to go to my events on my page, but you can just as easily go to the link and you'll find out a lot of that information through the Portal to Ascension or Global Ascension Tours page. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I can't actually see on this particular feed how many people are on this
we had
us.
Like around 20, 21 at any given time.
Okay, cool. Well, that'll be great. And hopefully, you know, we'll get to post it and other people can watch it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining us, and happy Easter. Happy spring. I hope the snow is melting wherever you are. I've been out gardening the last 2 or 3 days with my spring fever. So I'm, you know, I'm getting all excited, but I hear there's a cold front coming through tomorrow. So, you know, we're on that transition edge.
Yep. Cool. So thank you, everybody. And Tricia, I'm excited to see you in a few days. I'll be there.
I'm looking forward to it. Okay, thanks, Neil. God bless everybody.